we're going to talk about sewer, and that's everybody's favorite, so that's what we're here for. Yeah, that's right. Ty has put a lot of work into putting this program together, and we believe it's a program that will really benefit the city of Moscow. I'm just going to give a brief introduction of what it is, and then I'll let Ty take it over from there. FOG, we've been through a few council workshops and committee on this. Fats, oils, and greases is what it refers to. Those things that we all generate as we're cooking and putting things down the drain. And it really can be problematic for our sewer system. Since we went to the Public Works Finance Committee last week, we had a relatively serious sewer backup that was almost entirely attributable to FOG. It coming out of a food service establishment. Luckily, the establishment itself that was likely the source of a lot of the FOG found it once they saw that they had a basement that wasn't supposed to be a wading pool, and we were able to get it unplugged. But you know, it's one of those things where it can have such a large impact, not only on the producer, but anybody upstream. You know, luckily we caught this when we did, but you know, if it goes for longer, it can go upstream and affect a lot of businesses and residences that didn't necessarily contribute as much. And so that's really the goal of our FOG program, is that, you know, the fats, oils, and greases, they are a cost to the city. They can damage city infrastructure, and they can be something that requires us to go out and put in a lot of work and damage the city infrastructure, but also private infrastructure. And so it's something we want to deal with, and we think we've got a good program to do that. The program that we're going to propose today is applicable citywide. It applies to everybody within the city of Moscow. We have different strategies for trying to reach out to different levels of compliance, depending on the potential impact that somebody might have on the system. Much in the same way that the police department will enforce speeding more robustly in a school zone than they will in a cul-de-sac. That doesn't mean to say that if they get a call that says someone's going 100 miles in a cul-de-sac that they're not going to respond. This will be implemented much the same way. We look at the impact, the potential impacts, and Ty will get into that a little bit and talk about how we determine the impacts and what our strategies are. Just a real brief example, you know, in a residential area, as we look at our residents, they don't have the potential to generate nearly as many fats, oils, and greases and add them to the system. And so our strategy for them will involve things like public outreach, education, providing home containers so that they can collect the fats, oils, and greases and dispose of them properly. And then for high impact, we have high impact strategies for our higher impact, for the people and establishments that have the potential to add a lot more to the system, like our food service establishments, which is what Ty will touch on. And so that's our goal, is to have the formation of the program be appropriate to the level of impact and engage our response to it that way. And so I'm going to let Ty go ahead and take it from here and just talk about some of the basics of the program, and then we'll take questions after that.
Okay, Ty.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you. Oh, thanks. Thank you, Mayor Lambert and council members. Oh, yeah.
No presentation today.
Sometime we'll get it figured out. Thank you. So yes, here we are again, and I will bring you our proposed changes to Title 5, Chapter 3. So briefly, I'm going to go ahead and go over quickly what is FOG. Like Tyler said, we've been through this a couple times, so I'll touch on that. Again, briefly, just why it's a problem for us. We'll talk briefly about what the current regulations are as far as city code and some others, and then we'll get right into what those proposed changes are. So first of all, we've all heard it by now, fat, oil, and grease is FOG. These are some of the things, you know, bacon and other meats. Obviously, we all know that. Oils, that's pretty straightforward. It comes in some other packages, dairy products, butter, deep-fried foods. Some things you might not think about as much, you know, sauces and gravies, cheese, these sort of things can pack a pretty big punch. Some salad dressings, you know, those things are little sneaky areas where FOG can hide. That picture on the right there is a fume hood over like a flat-top grill, and those grates there used to be shiny stainless steel. They obviously are not. This is also FOG. This is what ends up happening in our sewer system. This is an 18-inch sewer main here in the city of Moscow that is, as you can see, becoming pretty severely blocked. 60, 70% blockage, and that can easily become a big problem for us. That turns the capacity of that sewer pipe into a much smaller pipe, and like Tyler said, can affect everything upstream there. So this was a disaster averted as well. We were able to get that cleaned out with our equipment. Why it's a problem for us? Again, it's can reduce the hydraulic capacity of our collection system. The water, once it goes down the drains, we want to make sure it makes its way to the treatment plant, and that can obviously impede that. And like Tyler said, repeated cleanings. We've found that the same areas over and over are building up these fog deposits, and so that affects our plan. We're on a cleaning schedule where we want to clean every foot of pipe in the city and make sure that it is that it will convey the wastewater to the treatment plant. Once the fog that doesn't stick to the walls of the sewers does reach the treatment plant, same thing there. There are areas where it builds up continuously. A lot of it is removed and has to be disposed of. It increases our biochemical oxygen demand, which is one of the parameters of our Npdes, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. That's our EPA approved permit, and that's something that we have to manage. So I'll talk a little bit about that permit, the Npdes permit there, and part of that says that we have to at all times maintain all of the facilities that we use to treat our wastewater. That includes the collection system, the sanitary sewer, the treatment plant itself, and the discharge that we put into Paradise Creek. Currently, city code here maintains that 100 parts per million of fat, oil, and grease is the limit that is to be discharged. And like Tyler said, that applies to everybody. That's to businesses and the residential side as well. Any waste that has a deleterious effect, has a negative effect on our system that can impede our ability to manage that waste, is prohibited and has to be pre-treated to an acceptable condition. Where installed, an interceptor, which is something that will capture and hold any of those wastes that we don't want to get into the system, has to be maintained in continuously efficient operation at all times. And here's an example of an underground interceptor that was not maintained in efficient operation. That is untreated sewage on the ground, and that's something we cannot have. So as I get into the proposed changes now, I'm not going to put up everything in your packet. You have all the exact wording, and that's available to everyone, but I will just kind of talk about what those changes are and what they actually mean for us and for those that it might be affected. So here's some of the terms we're going to change or to add to this chapter. The first of those is best management practices, and those are, the code has certain provisions that says you have to do this. Well, the best management practices are exactly how to do that. It's the roadmap. How do you get from here to having those discharges that are acceptable? And then some terms involving interceptors and exactly what that is. Like I said, it's essentially a device that will trap and hold the negative items or the negative stuff that we don't want coming into the system. And then obviously we're talking about grease, so a grease interceptor is pertinent there as well. So as we get into some of the changes here, the first one in Section 331, that will give us the authority to specifically require the installation of interceptors where it's deemed necessary. And for the most part, like we've talked about, that's going to involve food service establishments and other food production facilities. It states that it must be a type and size that it's approved, and that's based on plumbing code. And it must be in a location that's suitable for maintenance. So, tucking it under a sink with a bunch of plumbing in front of it is not gonna work. It gives us the authority, excuse me, to establish these best management practices that we talked about. Lets us, and those are going to be fully enforceable under the code. Those are, like I said, those will give us the exact steps to take to follow the requirements.